Welcome to the deep dive.
Yeah.
If you're learning a new language, maybe English, and you sent us some thoughts on it, well, this one's definitely for you.
That's right. We've been looking at some really interesting research, brain science, language learning guides.
Yeah?
And today we're diving into how learning that new language, like English, actually changes your brain. And the benefits go way beyond just ordering coffee, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So our mission today, take all this science stuff, all these strategies, and boil it down. We want to pull out the most interesting, most useful bits for you.
Mm-hmm.
So you can really see how the effort you're putting in is, well, physically changing your mind for the better.
Okay, so first big idea, neuroplasticity. Sounds complicated, but it's basically the brain's ability to change.
Right.
A researcher, John Grundy, talks about extensive neuroplasticity from language learning. It means your brain isn't, fixed. It literally rearranges itself, forms new connections.
It's like finding a new way to work when your usual road is blocked. Your brain builds these alternative routes, makes it more flexible.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. And there are models, like the BAPSS model, that sort of map this out.
Okay.
When you first start, the front parts of your brain are really active. Heavy lifting.
Makes sense. Lots of thinking.
But as you get better, more fluent in English, say, the processing shifts. It moves to areas that handle things more automatically, like motor skills, sensory stuff.
That feeling. When you just understand English without consciously translating back in your head.
Exactly. That's the shift happening. And there's some cool research backing this up. The Max Planck Institute, they did a study with Syrian refugees learning German.
Okay, what did they do?
They used MRI scans, brain imaging, and something called tractography, which maps the connections, the brain's wiring. They tracked them for 6 months while they learned German.
6 months. And they saw changes.
Oh yeah, big changes. First, the connections within the language network itself got stronger, like the pathways became clearer, faster.
So information flows better.
Right. And they also saw more involvement from other areas, even in the right hemisphere, which isn't typically seen as the main language side for most right-handed people.
Interesting. So more of the brain gets involved.
And the connections between the two hemispheres, the left and right sides, also improved as their German got better. Better teamwork between the brain's halves.
Wow. So it's like the whole system is upgrading.
Pretty much. And it gets more specific, too, like the networks for vocabulary, for sounds, the phonological stuff they saw strengthening there, especially later on in the second half of the study. Like the brain was consolidating the learning.
Okay, that makes sense. Practice makes perfect, or at least makes stronger brain connections.
But here's a twist, something maybe a bit unexpected. The connectivity between the hemispheres through the corpus callosum actually showed a slight reduction in some ways.
Reduced. How does that fit? Seems counterintuitive.
Well, one theory is that as the dominant language hemisphere, usually the left, gets really good and efficient at the new language, it might need less sort of control or input from the right side for certain tasks. It's becoming more specialized, more automatic.
Okay, so it's like it's taking charge more effectively on its own.
Possibly.
Yeah.
And the really crucial part, all these dynamic changes in their brain connectivity, they directly correlated with how well the refugees scored on their German language tests.
So it's not just abstract changes. You can see the learning progress reflected in the brain structure.
Exactly. Proof positive. And it's not just that one study. There was another one in Sweden with military interpreters undergoing intense language training.
Right, I remember reading about that one.
3 months. Intense.
Yeah.
And they found the cortex, the outer layer of the brain, actually got thicker in language areas. The control group studying other stuff. No such changes.
So even the physical structure changes. And it doesn't have to be super intense military training either, right?
No, not at all. Ashley Chung-Fat Yim, another researcher, points out that even regular college students taking a Spanish course showed increased neural activity after just 6 months compared to controls.
Just a standard class.
Yeah. So regular, consistent effort makes a difference. It really drives home that learning a language isn't just, putting facts in your head. It's fundamentally rewiring the organ itself.
Okay, so the brain physically changes. That's huge. But what does that mean for us beyond just speaking English or German or Spanish better? What are the other benefits?
This is where it gets really exciting, I think. Chung-Fat Yim talks about the impact on the executive processing part of the brain.
The control center.
Yeah, basically, your brain's CEO. Planning, focusing attention, switching between tasks, monitoring your own behavior. Language learning seems to strengthen this whole system.
So learning English could actually make you better at, say, managing your time or focusing your work.
That's the implication, yeah. Improved cognitive control. And there's more. Some research links bilingualism to better theory of mind.
Theory of mind, that's understanding what other people are thinking or feeling, right?
Exactly. Understanding others' perspectives. Bilingual kids, for example, often grasp earlier that someone else might not understand a language they know. There was a study in 2016 hinting this might even lead to greater empathy.
Wow. Learning a language could make you more understanding of others. That's quite a thought.
It is. And maybe the most talked about benefit? Delaying dementia.
Right. You mentioned John Grundy earlier.
Yes. He highlights findings that bilinguals, on average, show symptoms of dementia something like 4 to 6 years later than monolinguals.
4 to 6 years. That's incredible.
It really is. He noted it's a more significant delay than anything current medications offer. It's a really powerful cognitive reserve effect.
Okay, that alone is a massive motivator to keep learning. So this brain science is amazing, but let's make it practical. How do we use this knowledge to actually learn English more effectively? There was that guide on strategies.
Absolutely. Let's connect the dots. The guide emphasizes starting with goals and a plan. Makes sense, right? You need direction. Short-term goals, long-term goals. Like, this week I'll learn X phrases, or in 6 months I want to hold a simple conversation.
Having a roadmap. And then it breaks down the core skills: vocabulary, grammar, pronunciation, listening.
The building blocks. Vocabulary. Learn new words daily, but crucially use them. Grammar. Understand how sentences work. The structure. Pronunciation and listening. Maybe podcasts, movies, really tuning your ear.
And consistency is key, the guide says. Regular practice, even short bursts daily. It's about routine, incremental progress, building those pathways steadily.
Yeah, that regularity reinforces the neural changes. And for making things stick, especially vocabulary. Space repetition.
Ah, like flashcard apps, Anki, Quizlet.
Exactly. They show you things just before you're about to forget them. Super effective for memory, for strengthening those connections we talked about.
Okay, so consistency, space repetition. What about actually using the language?
Yeah.
Active learning.
Crucial. The guide stresses balancing all 4 skills: listening, speaking, reading, writing. Don't just focus on one.
Right, so listen to podcasts or watch shows.
Practice speaking, maybe join a conversation group, find an exchange partner online.
Read articles, books in English.
And write. Even just journaling a short blog post, it forces you to actively construct sentences.
Using diverse resources too, right? Apps, websites. Maybe even talking to people if you can. Keep it fresh.
Definitely. And make it fun. Integrate culture, music, films, use gamification points, challenges, whatever keeps you engaged.
And for more advanced learners.
The guide mentions things like actively trying to think in English, not translating, simulating real-life scenarios in your head, learning job-specific vocabulary, and importantly, getting feedback and analyzing your mistakes.
Don't be afraid of errors.
Exactly. They're learning opportunities, and you see how all this ties back to the brain. Active engagement, consistent practice, using different skills. You're literally exercising those changing brain networks, building that mental muscle.
Even just 15, 20 minutes a day, fitting it into your routine.
It all adds up. Using tech, apps, podcasts during your commute, it all contributes to reinforcing those pathways.
But what about age? It's a common worry, isn't it? I'm too old to learn a language.
It really is. But the science is encouraging here. Yes, kids seem to absorb their first language effortlessly, but adults absolutely can learn new languages successfully.
So it's not a closed door.
Not at all. Chung Fat Yim specifically says the way you learn practice, immersion matters more than your age. The brain remains plastic, adaptable throughout life.
That's really good to hear. It's about the how, not just the when. Okay, any specific brain areas we should know about? BBC Science Focus mentioned some.
Yeah, they highlighted Broca's area, usually in the left hemisphere, key for language production, speaking, writing.
And that changes too.
Studies show it can increase in size and activity when you learn a new language. It gets a workout.
Interesting. And it handles languages differently depending on when you learn them.
That's right. Kids learning 2 languages early often process both in the very same brain region. Adults learning a second language might develop a distinct, though nearby, area for it.
Like the brain allocates slightly different space.
Seems like it. And people learn at different paces, right? The BBC article noted that the areas showing the most change can differ. Faster learners might show more change in the hippocampus memory central and Broca's area.
And slower learners?
Maybe more change in the motor cortex, the part controlling the physical act of speaking. It depends on the individual bottlenecks, perhaps.
And our native language influences things too. the Japanese example.
Oh, right. Native Japanese speakers often struggle to distinguish R and PEL in English. Brain scans show those sounds activate the same area for them. For native English speakers, they activate distinct areas.
Wow. So your brain is literally wired by your first language in a way that affects learning the sounds of a new one.
It really shows the deep connection between language and brain structure. So let's wrap this up. What's the big picture here?
Well, it seems clear that learning a language like English isn't just a skill you acquire, like learning to type.
Yeah.
It's transformative for your brain.
Absolutely. We've seen it leads to stronger connections, gets new areas involved, changes how the hemispheres work together. This neuroplasticity is real and it's beneficial.
Right. Those brain changes can boost your thinking skills, planning, focus, task switching, maybe even empathy. And the potential protection against cognitive decline, delaying dementia, that's huge.
It really is. And knowing this, those learning strategies, setting goals, daily practice, using all four skills, spaced repetition, they make even more sense now, don't they?
Yeah, you can see why they work. They're directly tapping into the brain's ability to change and build those new language networks.
So for everyone listening who's putting in the effort with English, remember this.
Right.
Every little bit counts. Every word learned, every conversation tried, every podcast listened to.
You're not just learning to communicate.
No, you are actively reshaping your own brain in really positive, powerful ways.
So, knowing all that, here's a final thought to take away. Considering how language learning physically sculpts your brain, what's one small, consistent step you can take, starting today, to engage with English? Not just to talk, but for that amazing journey of transforming your mind. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.